Okay, here we come to the last question of the paper, and they always seem to set one of these about roots to a quadratic equation where we have to use a particular idea. You may find, if you're not used to this kind of question, part A a little bit tricky. The first thing I'd point out is that part B of this question is a massive re-entry point. It's hence the starting point for part B is this inequality from part A, and that's a quadratic inequality which you learnt about in chapter 2. You need a sketch graph. Never do a quadratic inequality without a sketch graph. You can find the critical values of that graph, make sure you've drawn it the right way up, select the appropriate parts of the graph and write down the possible ranges of k, and those 4 marks are really pretty easy. So the main thing on this question is if you find part A difficult, don't let it put you off doing B. But let's come back and talk about part A. Part A is a show that question. That means that this thing here is your end point. And it may be totally not obvious to begin with where that's going to come from. So the best thing to do is to ignore this completely to begin with. That's your end point. Look for your starting point. And here it is. The starting point is a quadratic equation with real roots. Whether a quadratic equation has got real roots or no roots or repeated roots is a property of a certain expression that begins with b squared. And you can quote that expression and say what you want it to be in order for it to have real roots. Don't just say the expression here, say that it equals naught, or it's greater than naught, or it's greater than or equal to naught, or whichever applies. So have a complete expression for the discriminant and what you want it to equal. Then look for your a and your b and your c and substitute them into the expression for the discriminant. Keep that inequality, keep that naught on the other side, and do proper algebra that links it to that, being clear what you're doing at every stage. One thing that sometimes goes wrong is this less than or equal to naught just appears as an afterthought at the end. Alright, try and keep a complete inequality from the very start, and line by line gradually turn it into this one. And that, when you follow it up with part B, should lead to success on question 7.